Once upon a time, in a small African village of Oko, there lived a warrior named Akani, unmatched in strength, known far and wide as the village champion. Every man respected him, and every maiden admired him. He was a giant among men, feared and celebrated alike. But for this mighty man, only one woman was worthy of his affection, Abeni, the most beautiful and mysterious woman in the land. She had an intelligence that matched her beauty and a grace that made hearts race. Akani was relentless in his pursuit of Abeni, convinced that his popularity and status as the wrestling champion in the village could win her heart. Yet, Abeni was unmoved, and she made her expectations clear. Akani stands before Abeni, his expression expectant. Abeni, cool and composed, looks him directly in the eyes. Only when you're the greatest champion, unmatched not only here, but across all villages, will I consider marrying you. Motivated by Abeni's challenge, Akani embarked on a journey that took him far beyond the neighboring villages. He faced and defeated every wrestler bold enough to challenge him. As he ventured to distant lands, his victories multiplied, each fueled by his unwavering determination to win Abeni's heart. Even in moments of exhaustion, when it seemed defeat was inevitable, the thought of what was at stake gave Akani the strength to deliver the decisive blow that secured his triumph. With every match won, his fame spread and tales of his prowess reached far and wide. But while the villagers celebrated his success, Abeni grew increasingly uneasy. She had issued the challenge hoping to discourage Akani, never imagining he would rise to it with such fervor. Now, hearing of his unstoppable victories, she realized she had underestimated his resolve. When Akani returned to the village as the undisputed champion, ready to claim his prize, the entire village, including the king, awaited the union of strength and beauty. However, Abeni was anything but joyful. She had unintentionally trapped herself. The challenge, known to all, left no room for refusal. Rejecting Akani now would bring shame upon her and her family. Marrying Akani, the most sought-after bachelor in the land, should have been a moment of pride. But Abeni's heart was heavy, for she carried a secret too great to hide. If she proceeded with the marriage, her truth would inevitably come to light. And yet, she had no choice. The path before her was set, and marrying Akani was inevitable. The entire village is abuzz with excitement. Villagers gather, adorned in colorful attire, drumming and dancing as Akani and Abeni exchange vows in a grand ceremony. Their wedding was a celebration like no other, a union of beauty and strength. Villagers rejoiced, honored to witness such a legendary pair come together. But as the festivities ended and night descended, the weight of hidden truths began to close in. As Akani and Abeni sit alone in a quiet room, a sense of tension fills the air. Abeni had already resigned herself to the disgrace she believed was inevitable. Steeling her nerves, she prepared for Akani to fulfill his marital duties. But to her astonishment, and Akani's, he found himself unable to perform. Despite his best efforts, nothing changed. "This has never happened to me before," Akani muttered in disbelief, his frustration evident. Abeni, concealing her own relief, gently reassured him. "Perhaps you're just tired from all the stress. Rest and tomorrow will be better." As Akani drifted off to sleep, Abeni exhaled deeply, thankful for the unexpected reprieve. She was safe for tonight, but uncertainty loomed. As she climbed into bed beside her new husband, she whispered silently to herself, "Tomorrow is a new day. Who knows what it might bring?" However, the next day brought no change. Akani's condition remained the same. Troubled and desperate, he decided they must search for a cure. "Please," he begged Abeni, his voice heavy with shame, "don't let anyone know about this. Promise me you'll keep this between us." Abeni nodded solemnly. Not a single soul will hear of this from me, she vowed, knowing that this secret, like her own, would bind them together in an unexpected alliance. But as seasons passed and Abeni remained without a child, whispers began to circulate in the village. The villagers' expectations began to weigh on their marriage, testing their bond like never before. Rumors spread, and soon, it was believed that Abeni was barren and Akani's family pressured him to take another wife. But they both know their secret would be out if that ever happened. The burden of secrecy weighed heavily on their hearts, and they found themselves at a crossroads. Akani whispered, "My family blame you for our childlessness and I feel bad knowing it's my fault. Now they want to marry another wife for me." Abeni responded, "You don't have to worry about me, I can take whatever they throw at me. But marrying another wife will expose our secret. And that is why I have resolved that I will not give in to my parents marrying another wife for me." One day, as Akani and Abeni strolled hand in hand through the village, they encountered the prince of the land. Akani immediately noticed Abeni tense beside him. It wasn't the first time he had observed this reaction, but this time, it was unmistakable. The prince, wearing a knowing smirk, locked eyes with Abeni for just a moment before nodding in acknowledgement and walking away. That smirk lingered in Akani's mind. It was subtle but loaded, as if carrying a message only Abeni would understand. Akani's suspicions deepened. Later that evening, unable to ignore the gnawing doubt, Akani confronted Abeni. "Did something happen between you and the prince?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. Abeni's response was immediate and defensive. "Nothing happened," she said, avoiding his gaze. But Akani knew better. He had spent years wrestling opponents, studying their movements, and reading their faces. He knew what fear looked like, he had seen it countless times in the eyes of his adversaries. And now, he saw that same fear in Abeni's eyes. Akani didn't press further, but in his heart, he was certain there was a story behind her reaction, and one day, he would uncover the truth. Akani traveled to a distant land to face its champion in a highly anticipated wrestling match. The fight was hard, and for a while, it seemed like defeat was inevitable. But with sheer determination and a final burst of strength, Akani turned the tide in his favor, emerging victorious. That night, as his companions celebrated his hard-fought victory, a drunken villager staggered over and sneered at him. "The strongest man in the land of Oko," the drunk slurred, "yet you're impotent." Akani's blood boiled with anger, but one of his companions quickly intervened. "Ignore him," they urged. "He talks nonsense when he's had too much to drink." Yet Akani couldn't shake the way the drunkard had looked directly into his eyes, as though he knew a secret no one else did. Doubts gnawed at him all evening, and by the time everyone retired for the night, Akani had resolved to get answers. Before dawn, he sought out the drunkard's house and cornered him. With barely restrained fury, Akani threatened to kill the man if he didn't explain himself. Trembling and desperate, the drunkard pleaded for mercy. Finally, he blurted out, "Your wife is the cause of your condition." Akani froze in disbelief. "You're speaking nonsense," he roared. The drunkard, now pale with fear, stammered, "If you don't believe me, ask her yourself." Akani returned home with a heavy heart, the drunkard's words echoing in his mind. That night, as they sat alone in their room, Akani could no longer contain his turmoil. He produced a gun and pointed it at Abeni. Abeni fell to her knees, panic etched on her face. "Please, my lord, don't kill me," she begged. "A man told me you are responsible for my condition," Akani said, his voice cold and unyielding. "I didn't do anything," Abeni cried, tears streaming down her face. Akani's voice hardened. Then tell me what happened between you and the prince. Abeni hesitated, trying to evade the question. But when Akani cocked the gun, her resolve crumbled. I'll tell you, she said, trembling, but only if you put the gun down. Slowly, Akani lowered the weapon and set it aside. They sat facing each other, the tension in the room palpable. Taking a deep breath, Abeni began to recount the horrifying story of what the prince had done to her, a tale that shook Akani to his core. The prince had once proposed to Abeni, but she had rejected him, repelled by his arrogance and cruelty. At first, she believed he had accepted her decision. But one fateful day, while her parents were away at the farm, the prince crept into her home and violated her. Devastated, Abeni waited for her parents' return and told them everything. Together, they went to the palace, demanding that the prince take responsibility by marrying her. To their surprise, the prince agreed, confessing that his vile act was intended to leave her with no other choice. However, the king adamantly refused the match. Instead, he issued a chilling decree: no one in the village must ever hear of the incident, or Abeni's family would face banishment. As Abeni recounted her harrowing story, tears flowed freely, her voice trembling with pain. Akani listened in stunned silence, his heart ablaze with fury. The injustice of it all made his blood boil. But his anger was also directed at Abeni for not telling him earlier that she wasn't a virgin. Overwhelmed by betrayal and rage, Akani sent Abeni back to her parents. Despite his anger, Akani couldn't shake his love for Abeni or his growing sense of responsibility to right the wrong done to her. Determined to seek justice, he sought counsel from the wisest man in the village. The elder listened intently to Akani's tale and then revealed a shocking truth. He explained that according to an ancient tradition, if a royal sleeps with a woman without marriage rights, any man who marries her would become impotent. This was why the king had refused the prince's marriage to Abeni. He knew the curse would bring disgrace to the royal family. Is there any way to break the curse? Akani asked, his voice trembling with desperation. The wise man paused before answering. The only way to lift the curse is through the death of the perpetrator. Akani left with a heavy heart but also a renewed sense of purpose. He returned home and, the next day, sent a message to the prince, challenging him to a fight. The entire village buzzed with anticipation. Though the prince was a skilled warrior, everyone knew that no one could defeat Akani. The prince begged his father, the king, to annul the challenge, but the king refused. It is the law of the land, the king declared firmly. You must face him like a man. If you dare to take advantage of an innocent woman, then you must now face the consequences of your actions. The stage was set for a battle that would decide not only Abeni's fate but also Akani's future. On the day of the fight, the entire village gathered at the arena, the air thick with anticipation. Elders, women, and children filled every available space, their murmurs of excitement and tension rising like a wave. Drummers beat a steady rhythm, heightening the suspense as the two combatants prepared to face each other. Akani, the undefeated wrestling champion, stood tall and imposing. His body glistened with the sheen of sacred oils, and his muscles flexed with every movement. His regalia of curry-decorated armbands and a loincloth dyed in traditional patterns marked him as a man of the people, a symbol of their collective strength and pride. The prince entered the arena with equal determination. Though not as physically dominant as Akani, he carried himself with the air of a seasoned warrior. Clad in royal battle attire, he bore the crest of his lineage, a stark reminder of his privileged status. His sharp gaze swept the crowd, and for a fleeting moment, it landed on the king, who sat on a raised platform observing with a stoic expression. The village griot stepped forward, raising his voice above the murmurs. Today, we witness a clash not just of strength but of honor, justice, and fate. Akani, the champion of the people, faces Prince Ademola, the warrior of the throne. The drumming grew louder as the griot concluded, signaling the start of the match. The two men approached each other, circling like predators. The crowd roared as Akani lunged first, aiming to overpower the prince with his sheer strength. But the prince was quick on his feet, dodging and countering with precise strikes. For a moment, it seemed the prince might have the upper hand, using his agility to keep Akani off balance. But Akani was no ordinary opponent. Drawing on years of experience and a deep well of determination fueled by Abeni's suffering, he adapted to the prince's tactics. When the prince attempted a sweeping kick, Akani caught his leg mid-motion and hurled him to the ground with a force that made the earth tremble. The crowd erupted in cheers, but the fight was far from over. The prince sprang to his feet, his expression grim but resolute. He charged at Akani, delivering a series of calculated blows that would have felled any other man. Akani absorbed the hits, his body a fortress of resilience, and retaliated with a powerful grapple that pinned the prince to the ground. As Akani held the prince down, he leaned in close and growled, "This is for Abeni and every injustice you have ever committed." He raised his fist, ready to deliver the final blow, but then paused. For a brief moment, silence fell over the arena. The crowd watched in stunned anticipation, the drumming ceasing as if the village itself was holding its breath. Akani's hand trembled, and his gaze softened. The griot's voice broke the silence. "Champion, remember, true strength lies not in vengeance but in justice." Akani stood, releasing the prince, who lay sprawled and defeated on the ground. Turning to the king, Akani raised his voice. "Your Highness, the prince has lost this fight, but let his punishment befit his crime. Let the people see justice served." The crowd erupted in applause, their chants of Akani's name echoing across the village. The king rose, his expression grave. He addressed the gathering, "Akani, you have proven your strength and your wisdom. My son's actions will no longer go unpunished. I decree that he shall face exile for his deeds, and the curse placed upon Abeni shall be lifted." With the prince exiled and the curse broken, Akani returned to Abeni's home. He apologized for his anger and asked for their blessing to bring Abeni back as his wife. Abeni, though hesitant, saw the sincerity in his eyes and agreed to return. Their union, though born of hardship, grew into a partnership rooted in understanding and respect. The village celebrated not just the end of the fight but the triumph of justice and love. A year after the dramatic events that reshaped their lives, Akani and Abeni stood at the center of a joyous celebration. The village square was alive with vibrant colors, the sounds of drumming, singing, and laughter filling the air. Men and women danced in circles, their feet kicking up clouds of dust, while children chased each other with boundless energy. At the heart of the gathering, Akani and Abeni sat beneath a canopy of palm fronds, their faces beaming with pride and contentment. In Abeni's arms lay a newborn baby boy, wrapped in a soft, woven cloth. The griot stepped forward, his voice rising above the jubilant noise. "Today, we welcome a new life into our midst, a son born of strength, resilience, and love. He is a symbol of hope, proof that even in the face of trials, the human spirit can endure and prevail." Akani, his heart swelling with emotion, took the baby from Abeni and held him high for all to see. The crowd erupted in cheers, chanting, "Long live the son of Akani! Long live the family of champions!" As the festivities continued, Akani and Abeni exchanged a look of mutual understanding. They had been through fire and emerged stronger, their bond unbreakable. The child in their arms was not just a gift to them but a promise to the future, a future where justice and love would always triumph. The king himself arrived to offer his blessings. To Akani and Abeni, he said, "Your journey has taught us all lessons of courage and forgiveness. May your son grow to embody these values and bring." As the sun set on the celebration, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold, Akani stood before his people and spoke. "This child is a new chapter, not just for us but for our village. He will learn from our victories, our failures, and our love. And together, we will build a legacy of truth, justice, and unity." The crowd roared their approval, and the drums picked up a rhythm that carried the celebration deep into the night. Abeni, watching Akani hold their son close, smiled through tears of joy. Despite all they had endured, they had found peace, and their story had come full circle. They were no longer just two individuals carrying the burdens of their past, they were a family, looking toward a brighter future. And so, the tale of Akani and Abeni became one of hope and resilience, passed down through generations, a reminder that even in the darkest times, light can prevail, and love can conquer all.